Moving is the worst, especially right after you've just started high school. I won't know anyone in this school, I told my mother on the first day of the school year. And it's high school. She hugged me. I'm sure you'll make friends, she said warmly. You're a light. After an awkward first day at school, I decided to explore the 6 acres of my new Century home. The woods were thick surrounding it, and I wasn't told much about what lay in the surrounding area. After a short walk, I saw a kid my age with a nose ring stooping to pick something up. Hello. I startled him. Whoa, hi, sorry, is this your woods? The boy with the nose ring asked. I laughed. Yeah, but I don't mind. He smiled. Want to see something? I agreed, and he led me a few hundred more feet to a shack in the woods. I said curiously, what is this place? It's an old shack. I live a few houses down, the boy started. Well, Oh? I said, surprised. So you go to Laketon too? Not anymore, he said somberly. We talked for hours, mostly about the town and the people in it. When nightfall came, I returned home. At dinner, I told my parents of the boy that used to live down the street in our woods. Glad you're making friends, my mother smiled. My father furrowed his brow. I heard the only child in our neighborhood your age is named Nathan. I didn't catch his name, I answered. Well, if it is him, my dad informed. He may have a hard home life. That doesn't matter, dear, my mother chimed in. True, I suppose. Just be kind, Anthony. I will, Dad, I said gingerly. Hearing that this newfound friend may have home troubles didn't change my opinion. I was interested in getting to know him, regardless. But I couldn't help but remember the sad look he had. If it was him, I thought, I'll make sure to be even kinder. The next day, I went straight into the path I took the day prior. I wasn't necessarily searching for the boy, but I was curious to learn his name. Like clockwork, he was there again. This time, he was crying when I walked up. Are you okay? I asked hesitantly. Oh, hey, sorry, he said politely. No worries, I said. I meant to ask your name. It's Nathan, he replied. We sat for a few moments in silence when I noticed some cuts on his arm. Are you okay, man? I asked, lifting my arm to touch his, trying to be sensitive. He pulled his arm away from my vision, turning slightly. I have a condition. I can't help it lately. My dad told me he struggled as a kid too, I said, trying to comfort Nathan. It's just... Nathan started softly. Lately, I can't feel anything, and it drives me crazy. You don't have to explain, but I'm here for you, I said, reaching out to him. He pulled away, and we stood there in silence for longer. Sometimes, I wish I knew how it felt to feel alive, he said finally. The wind picked up, and through the trees whistled a sound I could only describe as sorrow. I listened to it, wondering what I could do. But as I turned back to Nathan, he was already walking away. It started to rain, so I went home. That night, we had a thunderstorm. The wind whipped the branches to and fro, and the lightning mashed together as the storm brewed directly overhead. I was sitting in my room when my dad came in. Hey, about your friend Nathan, my father began. His father was just arrested for killing one of his children. What? I almost shouted. We're not sure of the details at this time, my father said carefully. We just know they found a lot of blood, and the other 2 kids are missing. So, it could be Nathan? I said in shock. Is he in custody? The father has been apprehended, yes. After a few moments, my dad turned to leave. Let me know if you need to talk. I didn't want to. I wanted to know if Nathan was all right. Just then, as I stared out the window towards Nathan's old house, a lightning strike illuminated someone in the tree line. Nathan! I yelled. I ran out of my room and out the front door towards the woods, where I saw Nathan standing. When I did not find him immediately, I ventured further. The trees groaned and cracked as the storm raged. I came to the shack and wanted to turn around. I was terrified. Finally, I saw Nathan on his knees, just on the other side of the shack. He was digging furiously in the mud. "Nathan! You're all right?" I said cautiously. He ignored me and kept digging. "What are you doing out here?" I started. "I guess everyone's looking for you." He stopped for a moment, heaving shoulders, cuts on his arms soaking in the rain. I noticed his fingernails were chipped and bleeding, maybe from the digging. "Do you need help?" I said, slightly fearfully. "I know it's here," he finally said. Sobbing, I didn't know what to say as the digging resumed. I was too scared to get closer, so I just watched numbly. His fingers dug in, and dirt flew everywhere in the heavy wind and rain. I decided to get down and start helping. I didn't know what we were digging for, but I just wanted to help. We dig until about 4 feet down, when I felt a resistance and something tear slightly under my fingers. I gasped. I had hit skin. I felt the ground where I had stopped and looked at my fingers as the rain washed blood off them. I choked on my breath and started coughing. "Is this a body?" I asked shakily. No. Nathan started sobbing and curled into the fetal position. It was a body. The distinct outline of a scratched nose with a nose ring betrayed its young face. The rain started to wash off the rest of the face. I went pale. The lifeless eyes stared up at me with familiarity. The face of the body we dug up was Nathan. I heard him sobbing and was too afraid to look up. "No, Nathan?" I stuttered, still nothing but heavy crying. After a few moments, I finally got the courage to look up, but Nathan was gone. I could still hear his crying, though. I ran back home and told my parents. Sometimes at night, I still hear Nathan crying. When my grandfather died, he left me his old cabin upstate, remote, falling apart, and silent as the grave. I only visited once as a kid, maybe 10 years ago. Back then, it felt magical. Now, it feels wrong. I wasn't expecting much, just a quiet place to sort out my life after a messy breakup and an even messier job exit. Thought maybe I'd write, breathe, fix the broken parts of me. But this place, it's watching me. The first night, the front door opened by itself, not blew open in the wind. Number. The fucking deadbolt slid out with a click, and the knob turned. Slowly, like someone was being careful. But there was no one on the porch, no footprints, no sign of forced entry. I locked it again, and tried to convince myself it was rust or pressure changes. I'm not a superstitious guy, just a tired one. That night, I barely slept. Every few minutes, I heard something moving inside the walls. Not mice, heavier, like dragging. On the second night, I found a message carved into the wood behind the kitchen wallpaper. I wasn't even trying to look for it. I just brushed a fly off the wall, and the damn paper peeled. The carving was deep, ragged, almost frantic. "Do not stay past the third night." I laughed at first. Nervous habit. Thought maybe Grandpa had gone senile near the end and started scribbling weird shit around the house. But it didn't feel like his style. He was military, clean, orderly, no bullshit. This question, Mark, it felt like a warning. I started to feel watched. Not like paranoia, like something wanted me to leave. But not because it was evil, because it was afraid of what might come next. The third night was the worst. I didn't sleep at all. The sounds in the walls turned into voices, low, indistinct, muttering gibberish. But then one word came through, over and over, whispered like a chant. Stay. 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 And then, around 3 a.m., every door in the cabin slammed shut. At once, I jumped out of bed and sprinted to the front door. Dead-bolted. Jammed. The key wouldn't turn. I tried the back door. Same fucking thing. All the windows nailed shut. I started to panic. called 911. The line connected, but the voice that answered wasn't a dispatcher. It was my voice, not just similar. Mine. It said, "You were warned, Noah." I hung up and threw the phone against the wall. Then silence, for exactly 1 hour. At 4:17 a.m., the wall started to breathe. I don't know how else to describe it. The wood expanded and contracted, slow and steady, like a lung. I could see the boards pushing outward, hear the creaking, groaning, almost like it was alive. And then the lights went out. No wind, no rain, just black. I locked myself in the bathroom with a kitchen knife, shivering under the sink, whispering to myself like a lunatic. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember waking up this morning. All the doors were open again. My phone was back on the nightstand. No damage, no logs, no proof anything had happened. But on the mirror, scratched into the foggy glass, was a new message. Fourth night. It's in you now. I'm writing this from a diner 10 miles away. I don't know why I came here. I should be driving south, far away from that fucking place. But something pulls at me, like a leash around my ribs. I don't want to go back. But I will. Because I don't think I have a choice anymore. And if I don't leave a message tomorrow, don't look for me. Don't come to the cabin. Burn it. The night had started off like any other. A calm, cool evening with an inviting breeze and the scent of summer in the air. A beat-up old Honda broke the quiet of the night with the roar of its engine as it practically flew down an old country road. Inside, two friends could be heard laughing and chatting as they drove. Robin took a drag off her cigarette before blowing the smoke out the window as her and her best friend Keith sped down the empty road. The roads were dark, with the only light coming from the moon and the occasional passing headlights. The best friends laughed and chatted without a care in the world, passing a cigarette back and forth as the car picked up speed. The two had no destination in mind, merely looking for a way to escape from life for a bit. Robin had one arm resting on the car window and the other on the wheel, while Keith watched the road ahead disappear underneath the car. The two had been driving for a while, and the bright suburban streets alongside the car had been replaced with rows of towering trees. Thinking nothing of it, the two continued on, driving and joking as they had been. That was until they noticed the fog. It snaked down the road in willowy gusts of white smoke, quickly engulfing the car and hiding the road and surrounding tree line from view. "Jesus, I can't see shit," Robin said, squinting as she tried to make out anything through the thick smog. "Yeah, it's like pea soup out there," Keith remarked unhelpfully. "Maybe we should turn back." "Not now. I can't turn around in this," Robin said, putting out the cigarette and tossing it out the window before rolling it up to keep the fog at bay. "Hey, I was gonna finish that," Keith whined. "And put more smoke in my face? I don't think so," Robin said, smirking playfully. Finally, the fog cleared up, and the winding country revealed itself once more. Robin let out a sigh of relief at the return of her visibility, but immediately felt unnerved when she realized she no longer recognized her surroundings. Since driving around the country was somewhat of a hobby of hers, the complete lack of recognition was an unfamiliar feeling. She shared a glance with Keith, who seemed to share in her discomfort. His body was tense, his eyes glued to the passing scenery outside the window of the car. Suddenly, a dark shape leapt from the shadows of the tree line and into the brightness of Robin's headlights. It moved with the speed and agility of a wild animal, but had an almost human appearance. "Shit!" Robin exclaimed as she slammed on the brake in a last-ditch effort to avoid the figure. Keith let out a shriek as he too noticed the incoming form. The shadow was illuminated for mere moments before it collided with the oncoming vehicle, revealing its long, gangly limbs and unnatural shape. The pair lurched forwards with the force of the crash as the hood of the car met flesh and bone, a sickening crunch ringing out with the screech of bending metal. The silence that followed was deafening, with the only noise coming from the pair's labored breathing. "Are you okay, Rob?" Keith asked, his voice quivering despite his attempts to keep it steady. She started, before pausing to take a shaky breath. "Yeah, I think so." Her hands held the wheel in a death grip, knuckles turning white from the lack of circulation. They sat in shock for a minute before Keith posed the question that had been hanging over them. What was that? Silence fell over them once more before Robin merely shook her head and got out of the car. Keith followed suit, but hovered by the passenger door as Robin made her way to the hood. Fortunately, the car hadn't been damaged too badly, but the hood had still sustained some serious denting, and one of the headlights was looking rather worse for wear. There was no sign of life anywhere around, meaning whatever they'd hit had likely run off back into the forest. However, what really caught Robin's eye was the blood. At least, she was pretty sure it was blood. The substance was inky and black in color, and dribbled down the front of the car from the center of the dent. "Is it dead?" Keith called nervously, still sticking as close to the open door as possible. "It's gone," replied Robin as she crouched down to investigate the mysterious substance. "It probably ran off." Her eyes drifted to the tree line, watching the pitch-black shadows and wondering what else they could be hiding. "Is the car okay?" Robin could help but snort at that. If by okay you mean drivable, then yes. Keith relaxed a bit at this news, yet he still remained tense. "What the hell was that?" he asked again, his voice smaller and more afraid now that he was outside. The once refreshing breeze now felt like cold breath against his skin, and the all-encompassing darkness seemed to shift and dance in the corners of his vision. Robin stood up and shook off her jitters before looking up at her frightened friend. "It was probably just a deer," she said, not believing her own words as they left her mouth. In all honesty, she was just as terrified as Keith, but she still needed to drive them home and couldn't afford to panic. "A deer?" Keith exclaimed in disbelief. "What kind of deer looks like that?" Robin shrugged and began walking back around her car. "Look, let's just get home, okay? We can speculate when we get out of..." She looked around. "Wherever this is." Her voice was calm and steady, and she refused to let the rising fear in her body take control. Keith nodded eagerly at this, quickly scrambling back into his seat and slamming the door. Robin turned the key in the ignition, and the car roared back to life, much to the relief of them both. She swiftly pulled a U-turn and started back down the road they had come from, her eyes glued ahead. They drove in silence for a bit, but neither could shake the overwhelming feeling of dread pooling in their stomachs. Keith looked away from the passing road and glanced in the rearview mirror before his whole body stiffened and his face paled in terror. "Robin," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's here. It's in the back seat." Robin felt her heart leap into her throat at these words. Her eyes quickly darted to the mirror, and she was met with the distorted face of the thing she had hit. It wasn't human. It wasn't an animal. It was unlike any creature she'd seen before. Pale, sagging skin covered with bulging veins lay over unnaturally sunken sockets, and cheeks as it grinned with an open mouth of decaying yellow teeth. From its mouth dripped the same black liquid Robin had found on the hood of the car. Its limbs were impossibly long for its body, and it was practically folded in on itself in the small back seat. Worst off all were its eyes, piercing, bloodshot, yellow, and staring right at her. Before she could even react, the creature reached over with lightning speed and grabbed the steering wheel. It yanked the wheel to the side with such inhuman strength, it was a miracle it didn't come straight off. The car swerved off the road and towards the shadow-filled tree line at an alarming speed. Robin and Keith screamed and squeezed their eyes shut, bracing for impact. But it never came. The shadows from the woods simply engulfed the car, surrounding them as the fog had previously and swallowing them whole.